The antique shop in Salem, Massachusetts, held treasures that most customers never noticed. Between the dusty furniture and tarnished silverware, hidden stories waited to be discovered by those who knew how to look. It was here that digital restoration specialist Jennifer Hayes found a photograph that would consume the next 2 years of her life and challenge everything she thought she understood about death, memory, and the strange persistence of family bonds across the boundaries of the grave. Jennifer had been browsing the shop's collection of vintage photographs, searching for interesting examples to include in her upcoming lecture on 19th-century photography techniques. Among a box of mixed family portraits and daguerreotypes, one image immediately caught her attention. The albumen print, mounted on heavy cardboard, showed the Henderson family of Boston in what appeared to be their formal parlor, dated November 1894 in faded pencil script. At first glance, the photograph embodied everything typical of 1890s family portraiture. Thomas Henderson, a distinguished man in his 40s with a carefully waxed mustache, sat rigidly in the center. His wife Catherine, wearing the severe dark dress expected of Victorian mothers, held their infant son William, while their 3 other children stood arranged around them in descending height order: 12-year-old Margaret, 10-year-old James, and 6-year-old Elizabeth. The formal composition, the heavy furniture, the elaborate wallpaper, and even the family's serious expressions all conformed perfectly to the photographic conventions of the era. What made Jennifer pause was not what she saw, but rather an inexplicable feeling that something within the image was watching her back. She purchased the photograph for her collection, intending to use it as a straightforward example of Victorian family photography. But when she brought it home and began the high-resolution digital scanning process that her restoration work required, Jennifer discovered something that would transform this ordinary family portrait into one of the most mysterious photographs in American history. Under digital magnification, details invisible to casual observation began to emerge from the shadows and corners of the image. The wallpaper pattern became crystal clear, revealing intricate floral designs. The books on the mantelpiece showed readable titles. The family's clothing displayed textures and fabrics with remarkable precision. But in the far corner of the parlor, partially obscured by shadow and the angle of the photograph, another figure began to materialize under digital enhancement. An elderly woman wearing a dark dress and white cap, typical of the 1890s, sat quietly in a chair that seemed positioned to observe the family gathering. Jennifer's initial assumption was that this represented another family member who had been present during the photography session but had been positioned outside the main family grouping, perhaps due to the hierarchical arrangements common in Victorian family portraits. Elderly relatives, servants, or extended family members were sometimes included in formal portraits, but placed in subsidiary positions that emphasized their secondary status within the family structure. However, as Jennifer continued to enhance the image, details about the mysterious figure began to emerge that defied logical explanation. Unlike the Henderson family members, whose images showed the sharp clarity typical of professional 1890s photography, the elderly woman appeared translucent, as if the camera had captured her in the process of fading in or out of the photographic frame. Most unsettling was the woman's position relative to the family. While the Hendersons were posed looking toward the photographer, the elderly woman seemed to be gazing directly at the family members themselves, particularly at little Elizabeth, with an expression of intense concentration that Jennifer found deeply disturbing. The quality of light surrounding the mysterious figure also differed from that affecting the rest of the photograph. While the family was illuminated by the standard studio lighting of the period, the elderly woman seemed to exist within her own sphere of softer, more diffuse light that gave her an ethereal quality, unlike anything Jennifer had seen in Victorian photography. Jennifer began researching the Henderson family history, hoping to identify the mysterious figure and understand the circumstances under which this unusual photograph had been taken. Boston city directories from the 1890s confirmed that Thomas Henderson had been a successful merchant who had lived with his family at 247 Beacon Street, one of the most prestigious addresses in the city. The 1894 Boston census records documented the Henderson family exactly as they appeared in the photograph: Thomas, Catherine, and their 4 children living in a substantial household that employed 3 domestic servants. But the census made no mention of any elderly female relatives residing with the family or visiting during the time period when the portrait would have been taken. Church records from the Henderson family's parish provided additional family history, including baptismal records for all 4 children and marriage documentation for Thomas and Catherine. The records also contained obituary information that would prove crucial to understanding the mysterious figure in the photograph. According to the parish death records, Thomas Henderson's mother, Mrs. Eleanor Henderson, had died on March 15, 1893, nearly 2 years before the family portrait was taken. The obituary described Eleanor as a beloved matriarch who had been deeply involved in her grandchildren's upbringing until her death from pneumonia at the age of 68. The physical description of Eleanor Henderson in her obituary matched the appearance of the mysterious figure in the family portrait, an elderly woman with white hair, typically dressed in the dark clothing and white cap favored by widows of her generation. But the timing made her presence in the 1894 photograph impossible through any conventional explanation. Jennifer consulted with Dr. Patricia Williams, a specialist in Victorian photography at Boston University, hoping to determine whether the mysterious figure could be explained through technical anomalies or unusual photographic processes. Dr. Williams' analysis confirmed that the photograph had been created using standard album and printing techniques, typical of professional portrait studios in the 1890s. However, Dr. Williams' examination also revealed the unusual characteristics that Jennifer had noticed in the mysterious figure. The elderly woman showed evidence of what appeared to be reduced physical density, allowing light to pass through or around her in ways that created the translucent effect visible under digital enhancement. Most remarkably, Dr. Williams discovered that the mysterious figure appeared to cast no shadow, despite being positioned in an area of the parlor where studio lighting would have created clear shadows for any solid object or person. This lack of shadow suggested that the figure had been present during the photography session, but had not been entirely substantial in the way that normal physical objects would appear in photographs. The technical evidence indicated that something or someone had been captured by the camera during the Henderson family portrait session, but that whatever had been photographed possessed characteristics that differed fundamentally from those of living human beings or normal physical objects. Jennifer decided to expand her research to include investigation of the Henderson family's experiences during the period around November 1894, hoping to discover whether family members had reported any unusual phenomena that might be connected to Eleanor Henderson's apparent posthumous appearance in their portrait. Boston newspaper archives from late 1894 contained several items that provided disturbing context for the mysterious photograph. The Boston Globe had published a brief article on November 20, 1894, describing unusual disturbances reported by the Henderson family at their Beacon Street residence. According to the newspaper account, Catherine Henderson had contacted police after experiencing what she described as supernatural visitations that had been disturbing her family's domestic routine for several weeks. The disturbances included the sound of footsteps in empty rooms, doors opening and closing without human intervention, and the strong sensation that someone was watching the family during their private moments. Most relevant to the mysterious photograph was Catherine's report that she had repeatedly seen an elderly woman who resembled her late mother-in-law sitting in the parlor during evening hours, always in the same chair that had been Eleanor's favorite during her lifetime. When Catherine had approached the figure, it had faded away, leaving only a sense of sadness and an unexplained drop in room temperature. The newspaper article had treated these reports as curiosities rather than serious supernatural phenomena, reflecting the skeptical attitude that characterized much of the mainstream press toward spiritualist claims during the 1890s. However, the timing of these disturbances, occurring just weeks before the family portrait session, provided crucial context for understanding Eleanor's appearance in the photograph. Jennifer discovered additional documentation in the Henderson family papers, which had been donated to the Massachusetts Historical Society by descendants in the 1960s. The collection included Catherine Henderson's personal diary, which contained detailed accounts of the supernatural experiences that had affected the family during the autumn of 1894. Catherine's diary entries revealed a pattern of increasing supernatural activity that had begun shortly after the first anniversary of Eleanor Henderson's death. The phenomena had initially been subtle. Objects moved slightly from their normal positions, unexplained sounds during quiet moments, and the persistent feeling that someone was present in rooms that appeared to be empty. But by October 1894, the supernatural activity had become more pronounced and specific. Catherine had begun seeing Eleanor Henderson's figure regularly, always in locations that had been significant during the elderly woman's lifetime: her favorite chair in the parlor, the kitchen where she had supervised cooking, and the nursery where she had cared for her grandchildren. The apparition never spoke or attempted direct communication, but Catherine noted that Eleanor's presence seemed to be focused on observing the family, particularly the children, with what appeared to be loving concern rather than any malevolent intent. The supernatural visits seemed designed to maintain Eleanor's connection to the family she had cared for during her lifetime. Catherine's final diary entry before the photograph was taken, dated November 10, 1894, revealed that the family had decided to have a formal portrait created as a way of documenting their lives for future generations. Catherine wrote that she hoped the portrait would serve as a lasting record of their family's happiness and stability during a period when supernatural disturbances had made her question the nature of life, death, and the persistence of family bonds. Most significantly, Catherine's diary suggested that she had been aware of Eleanor's spiritual presence during the portrait session itself. She had felt the familiar sensation of being watched by loving eyes and had sensed that Eleanor was present to witness this important family moment, even though she could not see the apparition directly. The diary entry also revealed that little Elizabeth, the youngest Henderson daughter, had been particularly affected by Eleanor's supernatural visits. The child had frequently been found talking to empty chairs and had insisted that Grandmama was present in the house, despite having been too young at the time of Eleanor's death to have retained clear memories of her grandmother. Jennifer contacted Dr. Michael Chen, a specialist in Victorian spiritualism at Harvard Divinity School, hoping to understand the cultural and religious context that might explain the Henderson family's experiences and Eleanor's apparent posthumous appearances. According to Dr. Chen's research, the 1890s had been a period of intense interest in spiritualism and communication with the dead, particularly among middle-class families who had been affected by high mortality rates and the emotional trauma of losing beloved family members. The Henderson family's experiences fit within a broader pattern of reported supernatural phenomena that had affected many American families during this period. Victorian spiritualism had been based on the belief that death did not represent complete separation from loved ones, but rather a transition to a different form of existence that could allow continued communication and connection between the living and the dead. Families who maintained strong emotional bonds were believed to be particularly likely to experience visitations from deceased relatives who wanted to provide comfort, guidance, or simply continued presence within family life. Eleanor Henderson's apparent posthumous concern for her grandchildren reflected common themes in Victorian spiritualist beliefs about the continuing care that deceased family members provided for their living relatives. The focus on observing and protecting children was considered especially typical of grandparents who had died before seeing their grandchildren reach maturity. Dr. Chen's analysis suggested that Eleanor's appearance in the family portrait represented the culmination of her spiritual visitations, providing permanent documentation of her continued presence within the Henderson family structure. The formal nature of family photography made portrait sessions particularly significant occasions when deceased family members might choose to manifest their ongoing connection to their living relatives. The investigation attracted attention from Dr. Sarah Martinez, a researcher at the Society for Psychical Research, who specialized in photographic evidence of supernatural phenomena. Dr. Martinez had been studying similar cases where deceased family members had appeared in formal portraits, and she was interested in the technical and evidential aspects of the Henderson photograph. Dr. Martinez's examination confirmed the unusual characteristics that Jennifer and Dr. Williams had identified in Eleanor's image. The figure showed consistent patterns of reduced opacity, absence of shadows, and unique lighting effects that distinguished it from the clearly physical Henderson family members in the same photograph. Most significantly, Dr. Martinez's analysis revealed that Eleanor's image possessed characteristics that were consistent with other documented cases of spirit photography from the 1890s. The translucent quality, the ethereal lighting, and the apparent awareness of the photographic process all matched patterns that had been identified in authenticated supernatural photographs from the same period. However, unlike commercial spirit photography that had been deliberately created for spiritualist purposes, the Henderson portrait appeared to document an unintentional supernatural manifestation that had occurred during a conventional family photography session. This spontaneous nature made the image particularly valuable as evidence of genuine supernatural phenomena rather than deliberately created spiritualist imagery. Dr. Martinez's research had revealed that family portraits were among the most common contexts for accidental supernatural photography, possibly because the formal nature of portrait sessions created emotional conditions that facilitated spiritual manifestations. The combination of family gathering, formal documentation, and the lasting significance of photographic records might have provided ideal circumstances for deceased family members to assert their continued presence within family structures. Jennifer's investigation had meanwhile attracted media attention when she presented her findings at a conference on anomalous photography. The story of Eleanor Henderson's posthumous appearance in her family's portrait resonated with audiences who had their own experiences with deceased relatives and the persistence of family bonds beyond death. The media coverage brought forward additional witnesses and family members who provided context for understanding the Henderson family's supernatural experiences and their broader significance within Victorian culture and society. Dr. Richard Thompson, a descendant of the Henderson family, contacted Jennifer with additional family documents that had been preserved through multiple generations. These documents included letters, photographs, and personal accounts that provided rich detail about Eleanor Henderson's life, her relationship with her grandchildren, and the family's response to her supernatural visitations. Dr. Thompson's family collection revealed that Eleanor Henderson had been an exceptionally devoted grandmother who had spent her final years caring for Thomas Henderson's children while Catherine had recovered from difficult childbirths and health problems. Eleanor's sudden death from pneumonia had left a significant void in the family's domestic arrangements and emotional support system. The family documents also revealed that Eleanor's supernatural visits had continued sporadically for several years after the 1894 portrait was taken, always during times when the family was facing challenges or significant life transitions. Family members had reported sensing her presence during illnesses, celebrations, and other important moments when her guidance and support would have been particularly valuable. Most remarkably, the family records indicated that Eleanor's spiritual presence had been perceived by multiple generations of Henderson descendants, with grandchildren and great-grandchildren reporting encounters with an elderly woman who matched Eleanor's description and seemed to be concerned with their welfare and development. These multi-generational experiences suggested that Eleanor's spiritual connection to her family had persisted far beyond the immediate period following her death, creating a lasting presence that had influenced the family's development and relationships across several decades. Jennifer worked with Dr. Martinez to examine other Henderson family photographs from the 1890s and early 1900s, hoping to determine whether Eleanor had appeared in additional images or whether the 1894 portrait represented a unique supernatural manifestation. Their investigation revealed several more photographs from the Henderson collection that showed subtle anomalies consistent with Eleanor's spiritual presence. A Christmas gathering photograph from 1895 showed a translucent figure near the family Christmas tree. A birthday party image from 1897 captured what appeared to be Eleanor's form, watching the celebration from a doorway. The consistency of these appearances over several years suggested that Eleanor's spiritual presence had been an ongoing aspect of the Henderson family's experience, rather than an isolated incident connected to the formal portrait session. Most significantly, the additional photographs showed Eleanor's apparent aging and changing appearance over time, as if her spiritual form had continued to develop and change in response to her family's growth and evolution. This progression suggested a level of consciousness and ongoing existence that exceeded simple photographic artifacts or family imagination. The Henderson case had begun to attract international attention from researchers studying similar phenomena in other cultural contexts. Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the University of Barcelona had been investigating comparable cases of deceased family members appearing in formal photographs throughout Europe and Latin America, revealing that the Henderson experience was part of a broader global pattern of supernatural family photography. Dr. Rodriguez's comparative research revealed that family portraits from the late 19th and early 20th centuries frequently contained mysterious additional figures that could be identified as deceased relatives who had maintained strong emotional connections to their living family members. These appearances occurred across different cultural, religious, and geographical contexts, suggesting universal aspects of human consciousness and family bonding that transcended death. The international research collaboration revealed that supernatural family photography had been significantly more common during the Victorian era than previously recognized, with documented cases from North America, Europe, Asia, and other regions showing remarkably consistent patterns of posthumous family participation in formal photographic documentation. Jennifer collaborated with researchers from multiple institutions to create a comprehensive database of supernatural family photography, documenting hundreds of cases where deceased relatives had appeared in formal portraits and family gatherings. The database revealed patterns and characteristics that helped distinguish genuine supernatural manifestations from photographic artifacts, deliberate manipulations, or psychological projection. The research had practical applications for contemporary families who discovered mysterious figures in their own historical photograph collections, providing frameworks for understanding and interpreting potential supernatural elements in family documentation. More broadly, the Henderson case had contributed to evolving understanding of consciousness, family relationships, and the possibility that human awareness and emotional connections might persist beyond physical death in ways that could influence material reality and be documented through photographic technology. Jennifer's investigation had revealed that Eleanor Henderson's appearance in her family's 1894 portrait represented more than an isolated supernatural incident. It documented the persistence of family love and care that could transcend death and continue to influence family development across multiple generations. The photograph had become a powerful symbol of the enduring nature of family bonds and the possibility that death might not represent complete separation from loved ones. Eleanor's translucent presence in the corner of her family's formal portrait served as permanent evidence that some connections were strong enough to overcome any obstacle, including the apparent finality of death. As the investigation continued to evolve and attract attention from researchers around the world, Eleanor Henderson's gentle figure watching over her family would remain as a testament to the extraordinary power of grandmotherly love and the mysterious ways that family connections could persist across the boundaries between life and death. The 1894 family portrait that had appeared completely normal for more than a century had been transformed into one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for the survival of consciousness beyond death and the continuing influence of deceased family members on the lives of their living relatives. Jennifer's discovery had demonstrated that some family photographs contained layers of meaning and significance that could only be revealed through careful investigation and analysis, and that behind the formal surface of Victorian family life lay complex spiritual realities that challenged conventional understanding of life, death, and the persistence of human love across time and space. Eleanor Henderson would forever watch over her family from the shadows of their formal portrait, serving as an eternal reminder that some guardianship transcended physical existence and that the bonds forged between grandmothers and grandchildren could create connections that no force on earth could permanently sever. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Jennifer received an unexpected package from an elderly man in Providence, Rhode Island, named Dr. William Morrison, who had seen coverage of the Henderson case in a scholarly journal about anomalous photography. Dr. Morrison, a retired professor of Victorian literature, had been following Jennifer's research because he possessed what he believed to be a related photograph that might expand the understanding of supernatural family photography beyond isolated incidents. The package contained a daguerreotype dating from 1896, showing the Morrison family of Providence in their formal dining room during what appeared to be a holiday gathering. Like the Henderson portrait, the image initially appeared to be a conventional Victorian family photograph, but Dr. Morrison's letter explained that digital enhancement had revealed the presence of his deceased grandfather, who had died 3 years before the photograph was taken. Dr. Morrison's grandfather, Captain James Morrison, had been a merchant marine who had drowned in a shipping accident off the coast of Maine in 1893. But enhanced analysis of the 1896 family photograph clearly showed Captain Morrison's figure standing behind the family dining table, wearing his characteristic naval uniform and watching over the holiday celebration with the same protective attention that Eleanor Henderson had shown toward her grandchildren. The Morrison case provided crucial comparative evidence that supernatural appearances in Victorian family photography were not isolated phenomena, but represented part of a broader pattern of posthumous family participation in important domestic events. The consistency between the Henderson and Morrison cases suggested systematic rather than random supernatural manifestations. Jennifer traveled to Providence to examine the Morrison photograph and conduct research into the family's experiences during the 1890s. Her investigation revealed patterns remarkably similar to those documented in the Henderson case: family members reporting supernatural visitations, unexplained phenomena in the family home, and a strong sense that their deceased relative continued to be present during significant family moments. Dr. Morrison's family records included detailed accounts of Captain Morrison's apparent posthumous visits, which had been documented by multiple family members over several years following his death. The supernatural activities had been particularly intense during holiday seasons and family celebrations, when Captain Morrison's presence had been most deeply missed by his surviving relatives. The Morrison family had also reported that Captain Morrison's spiritual visits seemed to be focused on protecting and guiding his grandchildren, particularly during times of illness or family crisis. Several family members had described receiving warnings or guidance that had helped them avoid dangers or make important decisions during difficult periods. Most significantly, the Morrison case revealed that supernatural family photography had extended beyond New England to include families throughout the northeastern United States, suggesting a regional or even national phenomenon that had affected Victorian families across a much broader geographical area than Jennifer had initially realized. The discovery of the Morrison case prompted Jennifer to issue a public appeal for other families who might possess similar photographs or have experienced comparable supernatural phenomena during the Victorian era. The response was overwhelming, with hundreds of families contacting Jennifer with stories, photographs, and documentation of deceased relatives who had apparently maintained spiritual connections to their living family members. Dr. Martinez joined Jennifer in creating a systematic database of reported supernatural family photography cases, developing standardized protocols for analyzing and authenticating potential spiritual manifestations in historical photographs. The database grew to include over 300 documented cases from across the United States and Canada, revealing patterns that had never been previously recognized or studied. The database revealed that supernatural appearances in family photography had occurred most frequently during specific time periods that coincided with high mortality rates from diseases, industrial accidents, and other causes that had claimed the lives of family members who had maintained strong emotional connections to their surviving relatives. The 1890s had been a particularly active period for supernatural family photography, possibly due to the combination of improved photographic technology that could capture subtle visual phenomena and the emotional trauma caused by economic depression, disease outbreaks, and social upheaval that had separated many families through premature death. Geographic analysis of the database revealed clustering patterns that suggested supernatural family photography had been more common in areas with strong spiritual or religious traditions, particularly communities with significant Irish, Scottish, or German immigrant populations that had brought folk beliefs about ancestor spirits and family protection to American communities. Jennifer collaborated with Dr. Amanda Foster, an anthropologist at Yale University who specialized in folk beliefs and supernatural traditions among immigrant communities, to understand the cultural contexts that might have facilitated supernatural manifestations in family photography. Dr. Foster's research revealed that many immigrant communities during the Victorian era had maintained traditional beliefs about the continuing presence and protective influence of deceased family members, beliefs that had been particularly strong among groups that had experienced trauma, displacement, or cultural persecution in their countries of origin. These cultural beliefs had created psychological and social conditions that encouraged families to maintain connections with deceased relatives and to interpret unusual phenomena as evidence of ongoing spiritual presence, rather than dismissing such experiences as imagination or coincidence. The combination of cultural beliefs, emotional trauma, and improved photographic technology had created optimal conditions for documenting supernatural phenomena that might have been occurring throughout human history, but had never been captured in permanent visual form. Dr. Foster's anthropological analysis revealed that supernatural family photography represented the intersection of traditional folk beliefs with modern technological capabilities, creating unique opportunities to document spiritual phenomena that had previously existed only in oral traditions and personal experiences. The research had meanwhile attracted attention from the Smithsonian Institution, which commissioned Jennifer to conduct a comprehensive study of supernatural photography in American family collections. The Smithsonian Project would provide resources for systematic analysis of thousands of historical photographs and would create permanent archives for preserving and studying documented cases of spiritual manifestations. The Smithsonian study revealed that supernatural family photography had been far more common than previously recognized, with significant collections containing dozens or even hundreds of images that showed mysterious additional figures that could be identified as deceased family members through genealogical research and historical documentation. The scale of the phenomenon suggested that Victorian families had been experiencing supernatural visitations at rates that far exceeded contemporary recognition or documentation, possibly because such experiences had been considered normal aspects of family life rather than unusual phenomena requiring special attention or investigation. The institutional support provided by the Smithsonian enabled Jennifer to employ advanced analytical techniques, including spectral analysis, three-dimensional modeling, and chemical composition studies that revealed additional details about the nature of supernatural manifestations in historical photographs. These advanced analyses confirmed that deceased family members in supernatural photographs possessed consistently different physical characteristics from living subjects, including reduced opacity, altered light reflection patterns, and absence of normal photographic artifacts such as shadows and depth of field effects. The technical consistency of these characteristics across hundreds of different photographs, taken by different photographers using different equipment over several decades, provided compelling evidence that supernatural manifestations represented genuine physical phenomena rather than photographic artifacts, processing errors, or psychological projection. Dr. Chen expanded his research to include comparative analysis of supernatural family photography from different cultural and religious contexts, working with international colleagues to document similar phenomena in European, Asian, and African family photograph collections. The international research revealed that supernatural family photography had occurred across diverse cultural contexts, with deceased relatives appearing in family portraits from Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Islamic, Buddhist, and other religious communities, suggesting universal rather than culturally specific aspects of human consciousness and family bonding. The cross-cultural consistency of supernatural family photography provided evidence that such phenomena represented fundamental aspects of human experience rather than cultural artifacts or religious beliefs specific to particular communities or historical periods. Dr. Chen's research also revealed that supernatural family photography had continued into the 20th century, with documented cases from the 1900s, 1910s, and 1920s showing that spiritual manifestations had adapted to changing photographic technologies while maintaining consistent patterns of family-focused appearances. The persistence of supernatural family photography across technological changes suggested that the underlying mechanisms involved consciousness or spiritual phenomena that could influence various forms of photographic equipment rather than being limited to specific chemical or optical processes. Contemporary applications of the research began to emerge when families discovered mysterious figures in their own historical photograph collections and sought expert analysis to understand potential supernatural elements in their family documentation. Jennifer established a consultation service that helped families research mysterious figures in their historical photographs, providing technical analysis, genealogical research, and cultural context that could help them understand potential spiritual manifestations in their family history. The consultation service revealed that supernatural family photography had continued sporadically into the modern era, with some families reporting mysterious additional figures in photographs taken with contemporary digital equipment during significant family events or memorial occasions. These contemporary cases suggested that supernatural family photography represented ongoing aspects of human spiritual experience rather than historical phenomena limited to Victorian-era technology and culture. Dr. Martinez expanded her research to include investigation of the psychological and emotional impacts of discovering supernatural elements in family photographs, working with families who had learned that their treasured family portraits contained images of deceased relatives. Her research revealed that discovering supernatural family photography could have profound emotional effects on family members, often providing comfort and reassurance about the continuing presence and care of deceased relatives, while also raising complex questions about the nature of death, consciousness, and family relationships. Most families who discovered supernatural elements in their photographs reported feeling closer to deceased relatives and more confident about the persistence of family bonds beyond physical death, suggesting that such discoveries could have positive therapeutic effects for individuals dealing with grief and loss. However, some family members experienced anxiety or confusion when confronted with photographic evidence that challenged conventional understanding of death and spiritual existence, requiring careful counseling and support to integrate such discoveries into their worldviews and family narratives. Dr. Martinez developed protocols for helping families process discoveries of supernatural photography, providing frameworks for understanding such phenomena while respecting individual religious beliefs and cultural backgrounds. The research had attracted attention from theologians and religious scholars who were interested in the implications of photographic evidence for traditional religious teachings about death, afterlife, and the relationship between physical and spiritual existence. Professor Sarah Johnson at Harvard Divinity School studied the Henderson and Morrison cases as part of broader research into contemporary spiritual experiences and their relationship to traditional religious doctrines about life after death. Professor Johnson's theological analysis revealed that supernatural family photography was consistent with many religious traditions that emphasized the continuing care and protection provided by deceased family members, particularly within Christian, Jewish, and Islamic teachings about ancestor spirits and divine providence. The photographic evidence provided new perspectives on ancient religious concepts, offering contemporary documentation for spiritual beliefs that had previously been based primarily on faith, personal experience, and scriptural interpretation. Religious communities that learned about supernatural family photography research showed varied responses, with some embracing the evidence as confirmation of traditional teachings, while others expressed concern about potential conflicts between photographic documentation and established religious doctrines. Professor Johnson worked with religious leaders from different traditions to develop educational programs that could help faith communities understand supernatural family photography within the contexts of their particular theological frameworks and spiritual practices. The investigation had meanwhile attracted attention from medical researchers who were interested in the potential therapeutic applications of supernatural family photography for individuals dealing with grief, trauma, and other psychological challenges related to loss and bereavement. Dr. Rachel Cohen at Massachusetts General Hospital studied the emotional and psychological effects of supernatural family photography on bereaved individuals, investigating whether photographic evidence of deceased relatives' continuing presence could provide therapeutic benefits for people struggling with grief and loss. Her preliminary research suggested that individuals who possessed photographic evidence of deceased family members' spiritual presence showed improved psychological adjustment, reduced anxiety about death and dying, and stronger sense of connection to family history and identity. The therapeutic potential of supernatural family photography led to development of new approaches to grief counseling that incorporated family photograph analysis and discussion of spiritual connections as part of comprehensive treatment programs. Dr. Cohen's research revealed that supernatural family photography could serve as powerful tools for helping individuals process loss, maintain connections to deceased relatives, and develop healthy approaches to death and dying that emphasized continuity rather than separation. The medical applications of supernatural family photography research attracted attention from hospice organizations, funeral homes, and bereavement support groups that were interested in incorporating photographic analysis into their services for grieving families. Jennifer collaborated with these organizations to develop training programs that could help counselors and support staff understand supernatural family photography and its potential therapeutic applications for individuals and families dealing with loss and bereavement. The training programs provided frameworks for helping bereaved individuals discover and interpret potential supernatural elements in their family photograph collections, offering new ways to maintain connections with deceased relatives and find comfort during difficult periods of grief and adjustment. As the investigation continued to expand and attract attention from researchers in multiple disciplines, Jennifer reflected on how Eleanor Henderson's gentle presence in her family's 1894 portrait had opened new understanding of the relationship between photography, consciousness, and spiritual experience. The case had demonstrated that historical photographs could contain layers of meaning and significance that exceeded their apparent documentary value, serving as windows into spiritual dimensions of human experience that had previously been accessible only through personal testimony and religious faith. Eleanor's translucent figure watching over her grandchildren had become a symbol of the enduring power of family love and the possibility that human consciousness and emotional connections could persist beyond physical death in ways that could be documented through photographic technology. The research had revealed that supernatural family photography represented more than isolated curiosities or technical anomalies, but rather documented evidence of fundamental aspects of human spiritual experience that challenged conventional understanding of consciousness, death, and the nature of reality itself. Jennifer's discovery had created new appreciation for the complexity and mystery of family relationships, demonstrating that the bonds between generations could transcend apparent limitations of time, space, and physical existence to create connections that could influence material reality and be preserved in permanent visual form. The 1894 Henderson family portrait, that had appeared completely normal for over a century, had been transformed into one of the most significant pieces of evidence for human spiritual survival and the continuing influence of deceased family members on the lives of their living relatives. Eleanor Henderson's protective presence in the corner of her family's formal photograph would continue to serve as inspiration and comfort for families seeking to understand their own experiences with deceased relatives, offering hope that death might not represent complete separation from loved ones, but rather transition to different forms of connection and care. The investigation had established that some family photographs contained profound spiritual significance that could only be revealed through careful analysis and investigation, and that behind the formal surface of Victorian family documentation lay complex realities about human consciousness and spiritual experience that continued to influence contemporary understanding of life, death, and the persistence of love across all boundaries. The most significant breakthrough in understanding supernatural family photography came when Jennifer received an invitation to examine a private collection held by the Thornfield Institute, a research facility in Scotland that had been quietly studying paranormal phenomena for over a century. The Institute's archives contained what director Dr. Margaret Sinclair described as the most comprehensive collection of authenticated supernatural photography in the world, including hundreds of family portraits that documented spiritual manifestations across multiple cultures and time periods. Dr. Sinclair had been following Jennifer's research through academic publications and believed that the Henderson case represented just one example of a global phenomenon that the Thornfield Institute had been documenting since the 1890s. The Institute's collection included supernatural family photographs from Britain, Ireland, continental Europe, India, China, and other regions where European colonial administrators and missionaries had introduced photography during the Victorian era. Jennifer traveled to the Scottish Highlands to examine the Thornfield collection, bringing with her the advanced digital analysis equipment that had proven so valuable in studying supernatural manifestations in American family photography. What she discovered in the Institute's climate-controlled archives would revolutionize understanding of supernatural photography and its relationship to human consciousness and spiritual experience. The Thornfield collection contained over 800 authenticated supernatural family photographs, spanning the period from 1870 to 1920, representing the largest documented archive of spiritual manifestations in photographic history. Each photograph had been carefully researched and authenticated using genealogical records, historical documentation, and technical analysis that confirmed the presence of deceased family members who had appeared during formal portrait sessions. The international scope of the collection revealed patterns that had been invisible in smaller regional studies. Supernatural family photography had occurred with remarkable consistency across different cultures, religions, and geographical regions, suggesting universal rather than culturally specific aspects of human spiritual experience and family bonding. Dr. Sinclair's research had revealed that supernatural appearances in family photography followed predictable patterns based on the strength of emotional bonds between deceased and living family members, the circumstances of death, and the cultural beliefs of the communities involved. Grandparents who had died while maintaining close relationships with grandchildren showed the highest rates of posthumous photographic appearances, followed by parents who had died while their children were young, and spouses who had died during periods of intense emotional connection. The timing of supernatural manifestations also followed consistent patterns, with deceased family members most likely to appear during significant family events such as weddings, christenings, holiday celebrations, and formal portrait sessions that documented important transitions in family life. Most remarkably, the Thornfield research had revealed that supernatural family photography appeared to be hereditary, with certain families showing much higher rates of spiritual manifestations across multiple generations. Families that possessed what Dr. Sinclair termed photographic sensitivity could document supernatural phenomena that remained invisible to families without this inherited capability. The hereditary nature of supernatural photography suggested biological or genetic factors that influenced individuals' ability to interact with spiritual phenomena in ways that could be captured by photographic equipment. This finding had profound implications for understanding human consciousness and its relationship to spiritual dimensions of reality. Jennifer worked with Dr. Sinclair to develop new analytical techniques that could identify the genetic and biological factors associated with supernatural photography sensitivity. Their preliminary research revealed that families with documented histories of supernatural photography often shared specific genetic markers that appeared to correlate with enhanced electromagnetic sensitivity and altered brainwave patterns. The biological basis of supernatural photography provided scientific frameworks for understanding spiritual phenomena that had previously been explained only through religious or cultural beliefs. The research suggested that human consciousness possessed capabilities that exceeded conventional understanding, and that some individuals were naturally equipped to perceive and interact with spiritual dimensions of reality. Dr. Sinclair introduced Jennifer to Dr. James Crawford, a neuroscientist at Edinburgh University, who had been studying the brain activity of individuals who reported supernatural experiences. Dr. Crawford's research had revealed that people who experienced spiritual phenomena showed consistently different neural activity patterns compared to control groups, particularly in regions of the brain associated with electromagnetic perception and temporal processing. Dr. Crawford's collaboration with the Thornfield Institute had produced groundbreaking research into the neurological basis of supernatural perception, using advanced brain imaging techniques to study individuals during actual supernatural encounters. The research had documented measurable changes in brain activity that correlated with reported spiritual experiences, providing objective evidence for subjective supernatural phenomena. Most significantly, Dr. Crawford's research had revealed that individuals who possessed supernatural photography sensitivity showed unique brain activity patterns even when not actively experiencing spiritual phenomena, suggesting that enhanced spiritual perception represented a stable neurological trait, rather than temporary altered consciousness states. The neurological research provided scientific validation for centuries of anecdotal reports about individuals who possessed special abilities to perceive and interact with spiritual phenomena, demonstrating that such capabilities represented measurable differences in brain structure and function rather than imagination or cultural conditioning. Jennifer participated in Dr. Crawford's research as a test subject, undergoing brain imaging studies while examining supernatural photographs from her collection. The scans revealed that her brain showed the distinctive activity patterns associated with supernatural sensitivity, explaining her ability to detect spiritual manifestations that remained invisible to other researchers. The neurological validation of Jennifer's supernatural sensitivity provided confirmation that her discoveries represented genuine perceptual capabilities rather than wishful thinking or projection, lending additional credibility to her research findings and analytical conclusions. Dr. Crawford's research had meanwhile attracted attention from government agencies interested in the potential military and intelligence applications of supernatural perception capabilities. The British Ministry of Defence had commissioned classified research into whether individuals with supernatural sensitivity could be trained to detect enemy activities or gather intelligence through paranormal means. While the specific details of this research remained classified, Dr. Crawford was authorized to reveal that preliminary studies had produced promising results, with supernaturally sensitive individuals demonstrating enhanced ability to detect hidden objects, predict future events, and perceive information that was not available through conventional sensory channels. The military applications of supernatural sensitivity research raised ethical questions about the appropriate use of spiritual capabilities for warfare and intelligence gathering, leading to ongoing debates within the research community about the responsibilities associated with studying and developing paranormal abilities. Jennifer's collaboration with the Thornfield Institute had meanwhile expanded to include development of new technologies for detecting and documenting supernatural phenomena in real time. Working with engineers and physicists, the research team created specialized camera equipment that could capture spiritual manifestations with greater clarity and detail than conventional photographic technology. The enhanced supernatural photography equipment used combinations of traditional optical systems with electromagnetic sensors, infrared detectors, and computer algorithms that could identify and amplify subtle visual phenomena associated with spiritual presence. Field testing of the equipment had produced remarkable results, capturing supernatural manifestations with unprecedented clarity and detail. The new technology enabled researchers to document supernatural family photography as it occurred, rather than discovering spiritual manifestations only after photographs were developed and analyzed. This real-time capability provided opportunities for studying the mechanisms involved in supernatural manifestations and understanding how spiritual phenomena interacted with photographic processes. Most significantly, the enhanced equipment had captured evidence of communication between living and deceased family members during supernatural photography sessions, with deceased relatives appearing to respond to questions and interact with their living family members in ways that suggested conscious awareness and intentional participation. These documented communications challenged conventional understanding of death and consciousness, providing evidence that deceased individuals might retain awareness, personality, and ability to interact with the physical world under certain circumstances. Dr. Sinclair's research had revealed that supernatural family photography represented just one aspect of a broader range of spiritual phenomena that had been occurring throughout human history, but had only recently become documentable through technological advances. The Institute's archives contained evidence of spiritual manifestations in architecture, art, music, and other cultural expressions that suggested widespread interaction between living and deceased individuals. The historical scope of spiritual phenomena documented in the Thornfield collection revealed that supernatural experiences had been fundamental aspects of human culture across different civilizations and time periods, challenging modern assumptions about the separation between material and spiritual dimensions of reality. Jennifer worked with Dr. Sinclair to create educational programs that could help the public understand supernatural family photography within broader contexts of human spiritual experience and cultural history. The programs provided frameworks for interpreting spiritual phenomena that respected both scientific analysis and cultural beliefs about death, afterlife, and family relationships. The educational initiatives attracted support from universities, museums, and cultural institutions that recognized the importance of supernatural photography research for understanding human consciousness and spiritual experience. The programs provided opportunities for students and researchers to study spiritual phenomena using rigorous scientific methods while maintaining respect for the cultural and religious significance of such experiences. Contemporary applications of the Thornfield research had begun to influence fields ranging from archaeology to anthropology, with researchers using supernatural photography techniques to investigate historical sites and cultural artifacts that might contain spiritual dimensions invisible to conventional analysis. Archaeological excavations that incorporated supernatural photography equipment had produced remarkable discoveries, including evidence of spiritual presence at ancient burial sites, religious locations, and other places where strong emotional or spiritual activities had occurred throughout history. The archaeological applications of supernatural photography research were revolutionizing understanding of ancient cultures and their relationships to spiritual dimensions of human experience, providing new insights into religious practices, burial customs, and beliefs about death and afterlife that had previously been accessible only through written records and material artifacts. Dr. Sinclair established an international research network that connected institutions studying supernatural phenomena around the world, creating collaborative programs that could address the global nature of spiritual experiences and their documentation through photographic technology. The network included researchers from universities, museums, religious institutions, and government agencies in dozens of countries, representing the first systematic international effort to study supernatural phenomena using standardized scientific methods and shared research protocols. The collaborative research revealed that supernatural family photography occurred with remarkable consistency across different cultural contexts, with only minor variations that reflected local religious beliefs and cultural practices rather than fundamental differences in the underlying spiritual phenomena. This cross-cultural consistency provided compelling evidence that supernatural family photography represented universal aspects of human consciousness and spiritual experience rather than cultural artifacts or religious beliefs specific to particular communities or historical periods. As Jennifer reflected on the years of research that had grown from her initial discovery of Eleanor Henderson's presence in the 1894 family portrait, she realized that the investigation had revealed profound truths about human nature, consciousness, and the relationships that connected families across the boundaries of life and death. The research had demonstrated that love and family bonds represented forces powerful enough to transcend physical limitations and create connections that could persist beyond death, influence material reality, and be documented through technological means that revealed spiritual dimensions of human experience. Eleanor Henderson's gentle figure watching over her grandchildren had become a symbol of the enduring nature of family relationships and the possibility that human consciousness and emotional connections could survive physical death while maintaining active involvement in the lives of living relatives. The investigation had established supernatural family photography as a legitimate field of scientific research with implications for understanding consciousness, spirituality, and the fundamental nature of human existence. The work had challenged conventional assumptions about death and separation, while providing hope and comfort for families seeking to understand their own experiences with deceased relatives. Jennifer's discovery had created new appreciation for the complexity and mystery of family relationships, demonstrating that the bonds between generations could create realities that exceeded conventional understanding of time, space, and physical existence. The 1894 Henderson family portrait, that had appeared completely normal for over a century, had been transformed into a doorway for understanding spiritual dimensions of human experience that connected scientific research with ancient wisdom about the persistence of love and family connections beyond apparent death. Eleanor Henderson would forever remain in her corner of the family portrait, serving as eternal proof that some guardianship transcended physical existence and that the love between grandmothers and grandchildren could create bonds strong enough to bridge any gap between the world of the living and whatever realm awaited beyond the boundaries of mortal life. The investigation had revealed that behind every family photograph lay potential mysteries and spiritual significance that could only be discovered through careful analysis and open-minded investigation, and that some of the most important truths about human existence might be hidden in the details that most people never thought to examine closely. As the research continued to expand and attract attention from institutions around the world, Eleanor's protective presence would serve as inspiration for countless families seeking to understand their own connections to deceased relatives, offering evidence that death might not represent complete separation, but rather transition to different forms of relationship and care that could persist across any distance of time and space.